Hello.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Can't really hear me because I've got these in.
Yeah, no worries.
1 second. Right, that's probably better, is it?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Good. Okay.
How are you? You okay?
I'm all right, thanks, Clayton. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Really good. Anyway, thanks for doing this. Thanks for coming on.
No, it's a great pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
I can imagine you're really busy.
Well, there's quite a lot going on for everybody, isn't there? Really. So it's
Yeah.
it's quite. And overnight there's been some flooding down in Skyward as well, which is actually not in my patch, but it's affected a number of houses there. So it's not
Yeah,
good for them.
I did see the pictures. It was a mine, wasn't it? It was a mine bust or something like that.
They think that, but yes, last night when I spoke to the council, there was too much water coming out for them to properly know, but the colour of the water was pretty indicative. Really, it was a kind of copper colour, which is quite indicative. But the water's clear this morning, which I think that's probably good news, really.
Yeah, well.
At least they can then work out what it is, which is good.
Yeah.
So how are you?
I'm all right. I'm trying to keep busy as best I can.
Yes. Okay.
My work.
Yeah.
Like this podcast, my work's all about communities. So.
Right. Okay.
But I don't know much about you, but I know we went to the same school.
Okay, that's a good start. Yeah. Ti siarad Cymraeg?
Ydy, wel. Tyma bach, ddim yn dda iawn, ond mae fe'n dod nôl.
Ti siarad yn iawn.
Oh, yeah. Diolch. Not good enough to do the whole podcast in Welsh, I'm afraid.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, one day, maybe.
Yes,
that a goal. Next time you come on, I will do it in Welsh.
Yeah, make that your goal for next time, for sure.
Like I said, I don't know much about you, but how did you went to Slovenia get into politics? What's that story?
Well, I joined the Labour Party when I was about 16 or 17, really. So when I was at school, in fact, which is obviously quite a long time ago now. So I've sort of been political since my teenage years, really. And both my grandfathers actually were both in the Labour Party. My parents weren't then; they are now. So when I went to university, obviously I was quite politically active there. And then when I finished university, I'm a lawyer. Well, I was a lawyer before I was elected. And after I finished university, I went to live in Poland for a year, and then I came back and I moved to London, and I trained as a lawyer, and I was very politically active there, basically, and for a long time. But then I decided to move back to Wales when was that? Probably 2010, 11, I think it was. And I decided I was going to have a go at standing for Parliament, actually, when I was still living in London. So it must have been in 2010. Yeah, 2010 general election. I stood for a seat in Beaconsfield, which obviously is a safe Tory seat. I think it's quite, people sort of say, well, why do you do that sort of thing, really? And I think politics can be quite challenging, really. You've got to kind of know that you've got a clear sense of your motivation for it, and that you have a clear sense of what you want to do, basically, because otherwise,
you find a lot of lawyers going to politics, though, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I think. Well, excuse me, I'm having breakfast.
No, go for it.
Otherwise, I thought I'd flag halfway through.
No worries.
I suppose you do. I mean, the Assembly actually hasn't got that many. The Senate hasn't got that many lawyers, as it happens. I can think. Well, actually, it probably has fewer lawyers proportionately than Parliament, for example. I think probably it's to do with if you see how the law works, then if you're politically minded, you're probably interested in changing the law, because it, obviously, like most things, doesn't work as good as it could. That's the first thing. And also the second thing, of course, is, many of the skills, if you like, that you need in politics, although there's obviously a range of skills, you learn some of them as a lawyer, basically. So, the ability to make an argument, stand up.
Yeah, it's law, legislation and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's probably why, really.
All the boring stuff.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. Yes, exactly. So yeah. I got elected in 2016, and elected in 2016. Joined the Welsh government then in 2017, I think it was first. Yeah, 2017, which is obviously pleased about that. And then I became the Minister for Brexit effectively in 2018, and I've been doing that since, as well as being the law officer, like the Attorney General for Wales, basically.
Yeah.
But that's obviously very important work, and I'm very pleased and proud to be asked to do it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really feel over yet, if I'm honest. I think it will actually be over for a while, but it's obviously a bit of a dog's dinner, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I know a lot of farmers were relieved anyway.
Right. Well, I suppose they're relieved that there's a deal, are they? Presumably?
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a thing with some farmers in December, early December, when I didn't think at that point that there would be a deal, if I'm honest, but and they were very anxious, obviously, because of the tariffs and the impact on land, basically.
Yeah.
And dairy, obviously. So it's better than it could have been, but not as good as it should be, I would say. But the main job, obviously, is to be the MS for Neath. Clearly, that's the sort of that's what you get elected to do, and that's what what I'm proudest of doing, really. So
you're from Neath originally, and did you grow up around?
No, I'm from Ponedylais. Obviously not very far away, but I went to school in the constituency, obviously in Slivera, and loads of my kind of friendship networks, if you like, from being young, are in the Swansea Valley and around there. So it's kind of very, very, very strong connections, obviously, with the constituency. But I was born and brought up in the neighbouring one. So, so whereabouts do you live, Leighton? Do you live in Banwen?
Yeah, I live in Banwen. I lived my whole life. My father was born. My father was born in the house I live in now.
Wow.
Yeah, in the front room. My grandfather bought that house. My great grandfather came down here from Newtown in Mid Wales to work in the mines, and my family's been here ever since. I love it here.
It's brilliant. It's a lovely part of the world.
Yeah, it's a lovely area.
Absolutely lovely. Really lovely. Beautiful setting as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I feel sorry for these people who are locked down in tower blocks in London. You're locked down here. It doesn't really feel much different, if I'm honest with you. You still got all the open space you need.
Yes. It's a different experience, isn't it, for us, I think.
Yeah, and I'm lucky as well because I can do my work from home, where I can pop into Dove when I need to, because there's not really many people here. So I'm actually quite lucky with that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
good.
It's a lovely, lovely area to live in.
It is.
And it's nice to do work as well that it's focused on the area I grew up in.
Yes. Yeah.
My work's all about communities and changing communities.
Yeah.
Because obviously this was a very coal area. I think the village only existed because of the coal.
Well, that's like a lot of our communities, isn't it? And they've seen an awful lot of change, really. And there's, in a way, change is always with us, isn't it? But it's, when you see a big local employer, like the coal industry or other, industries that have been the backbone of the Welsh economy, really, for decades. Yeah. When you see those industries, contract, then it's a huge challenge for communities in terms of employment, obviously, but also more broadly than that, it's a kind of cultural shock as well, isn't it? Because you've got kind of networks that go with that, and the kind of traditions and the kind of culture that goes with it, and that all starts to change as well. So that's a huge issue, really.
Yeah, so I was going to say that the coal isn't just about the jobs; it was the culture as well. It was everything. It's in the blood.
Yeah, exactly. And you can probably, I used to talk to Peter Hain about this. He used to tell me when I first got elected. He lived in Resolven, or he still does live not far from there. But he used to say to me on a Saturday night, when he first got elected, which was back in 1992-3, that he would go to the Resolven Rugby Club on a Saturday night and it would be heaving. You couldn't get to the bar, sort of thing. And obviously 30 years. Or however many it is, probably 30 years later. In all parts of our communities, it's very different, isn't it? Obviously, rugby clubs are still incredibly important social hubs in our villages, but probably not usual that for most Saturday nights you can't get to the bar, because it's just the culture has changed of how we spend time together, isn't it? There are big consequences.
Yeah, but what do you think is gonna? Where's the new industry coming from? Do you think what's going to replace that?
Yeah, well, some of the challenges at the moment is about responding to the kind of new sort of economy that we're all going to be having to deal with as a consequence of leaving the European Union. Whether people voted for it or not, really, it's still a huge amount of change, isn't it? So that's going to be sort of quite significant challenges for us. But I think the Device Valley is going to be quite a good example of this, really, with the sort of work that's going on to try and bring the Rail Innovation Centre. So the task really is to try and find sectors which are going to be sustainable into the future, really, and try and make sure we locate them in communities, which mean that people can have a good chance of getting employment out of them, really. So that's if we are able to make that happen, as I really very much hope we will, then that is a good opportunity, really. And I think there are some there are sectors which are about the sustainable sectors are the ones that you want. And there's quite a lot of investment going into trying to develop some of those. I think there's more that we can do around some kind of manufacturing, advanced manufacturing in particular. That's obviously going to be more of a challenge as we leave the European Union, but it's still an important sector. It's a very important sector for Wales. And we want to encourage that. I think the government's put a fair amount of money into kind of research in some of the sectors to try and encourage companies to locate in Wales, basically, and obviously bring the employment opportunities.
What kind of stuff is that? Like, what kind of technology?
Some of it's in the sense advanced engineering, isn't it? So it's around parts for vehicles and for aeronautical engineering. Some of it's kind of components for other sectors. Some of it's around energy, so not for our part of the world especially, but for, there's quite significant investments in marine renewables and so on, and that will have supply chain effects. Even if you're not a community that's by the sea, as obviously we aren't, it still means there are kind of supply chain opportunities. So there's a bit of it's a huge disappointment, really, that the Swansea Bay tidal lagoon hasn't been able to be established yet.
Is that still alive then? Or?
Well, there is a proposal which is on the table, which is being discussed by various people. It's a different proposal than the other one, but the key thing there is obviously clean energy, which is obviously good, but also good jobs in the supply chain, both for building that, but in a way, more importantly, building the other versions of that elsewhere. The key thing is to get long-term sustainability, isn't it, in terms of jobs?
Well, we got enough valleys in Wales, so at least one of them can be silicon.
Exactly. Yeah. I like the way you're thinking.
Yeah, but no, renewable energy. I think Wales is primed for that. We have such a coastline and such vast areas that we could definitely easily run the country off renewable energies and export renewable energies.
Well, that is we do that already. There's a significant amount of our energy is already renewable, but we've also got to try and invest in some of those technologies which are on the cusp of our existing energy technologies and the future ones. So there's quite a lot of investment in terms of underground heat-driven energy and that sort of thing, which is using disused mine workings. Geothermal is another example. So there's quite a lot of ways of using our existing, if you like, in some parts of the world, it's now historic energy infrastructure, isn't it? It's not everywhere, including around here. But using that to help build a kind of future energy source is going to be important as well, and really making use of a range of those things. So how would you do the podcast? Like, how does it normally work?
Well, usually it'd be face to face. So I got a little studio set up here in Bannon Library.
Yeah, I can see it behind you.
Yeah, it's a nice backdrop. I searched the whole building for the best backdrop, so I think it makes me look intelligent. I haven't read a single one of these. But Yeah, but yeah, we usually face to face. I prefer face to face because it's like no, you can kind of gauge off people. I'm not the best conversationalist, but I do try. So
You're doing fine so far.
but yeah, so I started off doing it face to face. I had Howard Francis on, and his wife Mary Francis came on.
Yeah, I know both. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. They were my first one, so I was was a bit nervous doing it, but it was alright. I did a podcast with George Evans,
Oh yes,
a local historian.
Yeah.
And I had a local author on, Bronwyn John.
Okay.
She lives up the road from me. She just wrote a book. It's on Amazon. It's really good. But,
good.
Yeah. Now you.
Good.
But,
fine. Well, happy to start whenever you want to start. Really.
Yeah, and I had Chris Johns on as well. You know Chris Johns, yeah?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. I did that one over Zoom though, so.
Did you? Yeah, it's a bit different doing it over Zoom, isn't it? Really.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, thank you. I know you're busy, so thank you. I appreciate it.
No, I'm very happy to do it. Do you want to start? Should we start? Are you recording it already? You?
We've already done it. Yes, this is it.
Okay, great, fine. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were starting it already. Okay.
I just press record and then go.
Okay.
I used to be I went to university to be a filmmaker.
Yes. Okay.
And I used to do cinematography, and we shoot films all the time.
Yeah.
I had always just film. I wouldn't say cut. I'd just press the record and I just go.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think you lose something when you say go. People.
That's interesting. Yeah.
To that moment, then I got to start now. If you just press record, I think you get a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. You get people talking freely, don't you, which is key.
The editor used to hate me.
I'm sure. Yeah. Exactly.
Cut through all this stuff.
That's not an editor's dream, really, is it? You know. But so it's as I say, it's my background actually as well. Before I became the member of the Senate beneath was I was a lawyer, obviously, but I worked in the media sector actually. So I did a lot of work with television companies and film companies and so on. So that's a very interesting sector, and another good, in terms of Wales and what we're trying to develop in terms of employment opportunities and so on. It's a good sector for us really, because there's there's already a lot of Welsh companies in that world, and they employ a lot of Welsh people, both on the kind of creative side, but as you know, on the technical side as well, and the kind of craft side. So it's a really good sector for us, and obviously we've done quite well recently, haven't we, with all the kind of things like his dark materials and all of those things which have been brought to Wales. So I think that's very exciting actually, and it's not just about filming in Wales; it's about producing as well, because that's what brings the employment, isn't it? The actual producing, not just not just using the locations.
Yeah, definitely.
Although we've got brilliant locations as well, obviously. But we're not far here from where they filmed the cave scenes in Batman, are we? That was just longer.
Henry Waterfall. I saw it in the cinema, and at the end of it, I recognise that.
Exactly. It's just around the corner.
I've been there. Let's go swimming there when I was little. Batman's cave.
Yeah, and exactly. So we can all go about a bit again, and just to be able to go to these places that we, which we can't all walk to, really, unfortunately, but nice to visit.
Yeah, definitely.
How have you found the last year or so in terms of COVID and so on?
I've been quite lucky, I think, because I work basically across the road from where I live, and my work is very very adaptable. I think when COVID hit, my work kind of changed, so I could do it from home, and I could do different things. So I've been very lucky in terms of working. And in terms of the work that I do, I think I wouldn't say it would be beneficial, but it's been a lot more for me to do, because my work is based in the community.
Yes.
I think there's a lot more I can do than probably could have, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good way of looking at it, really. I think, in a way, what I've definitely seen is that in terms of the way I work and work with people locally over the last year, it's been obviously extremely hard going, isn't it, for everybody really? Some people more than others, obviously. But there's been a huge amount, just like you were saying now, there's been a huge amount of, community-based either work or people supporting people in the community. I think it's been really, I found it personally very motivating really to see, the level of support people have been trying to give each other in, very horrendous times really. Although what I actually miss, if I'm honest, I was thinking this last night really. I was talking to one of the other members of the Senedd on a Zoom call, and we were sort of saying, obviously at the moment people are incredibly anxious and they about what's happening next and around the vaccine and so on, and you completely understandably, obviously. And so what you get quite a lot of emails from people who are obviously frustrated or angry, and you generally tend to hear more from people who feel like that than people who feel the opposite. That's just the way of the world, really, and it's in a way that's always the case, but it's particularly like that at the moment. And we were both saying to each other last night, what we kind of miss really is the other side of that, which is when you get to go and visit community groups or charities or organizations, which are often voluntary organizations, for example, or community organizations like like Dove, for example, obviously. And you see in the job that I do, you get to see, normally, obviously, you get to spend a lot of time visiting people and talking to people in projects and seeing what you can do to support if you can. And that's actually that's really uplifting. It keeps you, when you get that kind of criticisms and the complaints, which obviously you always do, that side of it keeps you going in a way, and so not having as much chance to do that over the last few months has been, I've missed it really, because it does give you a bit of energy and a bit of motivation, which is obviously good. Exactly.
I think one of the only good things that have come out of this is seeing how people have responded in communities, how people have supported each other.
Yes, exactly.
We're quite lucky in places like us because we're such a close community anyway. People look after each other, look after their neighbours, elder relatives. There isn't much need for outside help within families, I don't think, because they're so close together, friends and family. They have a support group around them.
Yes, yeah. And if if you haven't got family close, then you're going to pop in and see people down your street, and you make sure that you're keeping an eye on people. Which, that is, we're lucky really, because that isn't true everywhere, obviously. So I think you're right to say that's we should be proud of that locally. And I think one of the key things, really, to be honest, and this is a bit of one that we all wrestle with, I think, is we don't want to lose that as we come back to good times, do we? We'll obviously get through all of this. We don't quite know, when, but obviously we're going to be coming through it. And there's been a huge amount of, obviously, the way you describe it, the kind of the community-based care, which obviously will continue because that's people, looking out for each other, isn't it? But there's been also quite a lot of more formal volunteering, really, during this period. And also, I think it's been easier for organisations to work together in a way, which sometimes is a bit of a struggle. But people have pulled together, basically, in the last, 8 to 9 months. Especially at the very start, different organisations really working together to get things done. And I think one of the challenges will be to make sure that carries on, basically, even when we come out of these times.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, the other good thing is, and hope it carries on afterwards, is the way people's work has changed.
Yeah.
The way that people can work from home, there's a realisation now that people can work remotely, and this is it's one of the good things that's come out of it. Well, people don't have to go into the office every day, don't have to sit in traffic every day, cause congestion. They can work from home, or maybe go in the office twice a week.
It's in a way, it's I think broadly speaking, it's a good thing. But the way I think of it, it's a little bit of good and a bad thing, isn't it? Because some people have a home life, which means they can work from home. but not everybody's in that situation really.
Yeah.
But so we've got to be a little bit sensitive to that really. But even some more flexibility when people who are able to can work from home a little bit would be probably helpful to most people, wouldn't it? But what you were saying now, though, is really important about that kind of thing about people being stuck in traffic and commuting and so on. Because I think there are two massive lessons really out of this about that. One is, in order to help people work more at home if they want to, or if they can, we need to do probably much more than we are doing right across the UK. Actually, this isn't a Wales specific thing. To make sure that broadband is better and the digital connections are better, because that's obviously essential, isn't it? If you're saying to people you can work from home,
and actually infrastructure, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. No, actually, that's we've done quite a lot in Wales to roll that out. Although it doesn't, not every community would say they felt that, but it is actually true. But we need to think, the key with that is you've got to keep going, really, haven't you? So I think we need to make sure there's a kind of UK-wide way of doing it. Meath last week got put on the 5G network, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, actually. So the town itself, which is obviously very exciting. But the other thing I think we need to try and do is, so there's two ways of doing this. You can either sort of say to people, well, good, you can work from home and not have to commute into Swansea or into Cardiff, or, not everyone does that anyway, but for people who do, you can say, well, you can work in the Delas Valley and not have to commute to wherever you commute, for example. The other thing to say is, you can imagine our towns and, Neath, our larger towns, if you like, so Neath, Ponadower and others, Glynneath, you could sort of see those as being, as having sort of work hubs, couldn't you? Where people come, they might not be, their employer might not be in the middle of Neath, their employer might be in Cardiff, but they've got a work hub they can work from in Neath, so they can commute down the valley to Neath rather than right across to Cardiff or whatever, So I think that would be great, actually, because it means people don't really have to work at home, which can be a bit lonely. But they also don't have to travel so far to get to work, They can work with other people in the kind of remote way.
Wetherspoons, isn't it?
Yeah, you could do that.
Pint of breakfast on your laptop, you'd be happy then.
Exactly. Your employer might not think that that's so great if you're having a pint as you're doing your work, but.
No, what you said just now, because then you won't have the centralised, hub of work. Then you'll have Cardiff, everyone going to one place, so you'll have it dotted around the country. Yeah, it's a great idea.
And you could just basically, for people, obviously, let's be clear, this doesn't work for everybody. There's an awful lot of people do work which you can't do in this way. So we've got to think, we've got to obviously think about that. But for people who are able to work in this way, then it does mean that you can just, you could turn up to your work hub in, let's say Neath, for argument's sake, and with people of different companies sitting on desks around you doing their work, and there's a bit of sociable. Yeah. There's a bit of sociable.
Well, a friend of mine. A friend of mine lives in Jersey and works for a company in the UK. Just does it remotely.
Yeah.
But like I say, it's all about the work that you do, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is not everyone. Well, in fact, most people, can't do this. So if you're working in a shop, or if you're working in the health service, or most people's employment, really, you can't do this. So we've got to be. Everyone talks about this big revolution. Quite a lot of people, it won't even change their work pattern at all,
Well, because I had Chris Johns on the podcast, and he was talking about universal basic income.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Do you think how do you think it could work, or?
Well, so obviously I'm a Labour member of the Senedd, and universal basic income is sometimes regarded as a left-wing solution for things, and sometimes regarded as a right-wing solution for things. So it sort of depends what it looks like, obviously, in a way, because my starting point really is, in order for it to be effective, it's going to have to be quite a significant amount of money, and if that's the case, it obviously has, it's obviously a large amount of money to find, isn't it? I'm fine with that, by the way. But if you're going to find that much money, why wouldn't you target it at the people who need it most? Why would you provide it to everybody at an equal level? Because some people absolutely do not need help from the state, and some people need more than a basic income would provide.
Yeah.
So I'm not closed-minded to it, because I think if you were to do it alongside, the welfare state, then you could absolutely see a case for it. Generally speaking, people don't mean that; they mean instead of, and I think that becomes more problematic then, basically, because, as I say, to do it properly, it's expensive, which is fine. But if you're going to raise all that much money, I think give it to people who really need it.
Couldn't it be paid by quantitative easing?
Well, quantitative easing is basically printing money, isn't it? And you can do that in the short term, but you can't carry on doing that forever, although we have been doing it for quite some time in the UK. But essentially, that will end up causing inflation, and that'll mean the cost of living for everybody increases, and that means the value of the basic income obviously then decreases because you can buy less with it. So you need to find something which is sustainable without printing money, basically. And you could do it for, but the point about any kind of basic income is it needs to be a long-term thing, obviously not a short-term thing. But as I say, I'm not closed-minded to it, and I definitely would support, a pilot to see what could work. But I'm not, I suppose, I'm not a kind of cheerleader for it, because I also know that there's quite a lot of people who would advocate it as a means of reducing support rather than increasing support. And we've got to be really careful about what we're talking about, really.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing I can say about it is that I think it'd be really good for businesses or self-employed people. Because,
yes.
The biggest problem you have if you own a business is cash flow, isn't it? You do a job, and you're not getting paid. You put your invoice in, and you don't get paid for, say, 3 months. In that 3 months, then you haven't got no money. So to have a constant flow of money coming in just to pay the basics, I think.
Well, I think you've put your finger on something quite something very important and quite big there. And I think we've all seen, haven't we, in the last 8 or 9 months, really, how the way that governments have responded to support people, didn't take proper account, really, certainly at the start, of the particular needs that self-employed people have. They were sort of, in a way, people are regarding people as a business, and not all people in that situation are a business. Really, some of them have got very, very small businesses. You couldn't, so it's not really a business big enough to get economic support, if you like, but equally, it is the way they get paid. So you've got to find some way of supporting people like that. So I think there'll be a need for a big think about how we, after we come out of COVID, how we support people who are self-employed but aren't owners of big businesses, if you like. So freelance people, basically, and so what you're suggesting might be one way of doing that, really. But it's going to become a bigger problem because more and more people are in that situation. And equally, we've also seen the flip side of that is there are a lot of people doing work which you and I would look at their setup and think they were employees, but actually the way they're employed is effectively freelance, self-employed. So people who are, lots of delivery workers are in that situation, for example. And they shouldn't be. They should be properly employed with proper protection. So it's not, my view is that is not the right way of employing people, of having people work for you. You should be providing them with obviously decent pay and proper job protection and holidays and so on. But the truth of it is, at the moment, there is still an awful lot of people in that category, and it's increasing. Yeah. So we definitely need to find a way of making sure they're protected in the way that you're describing.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. My brother's one of them. He's a delivery driver.
Okay.
Works for a large, shall be called nameless, but a large online retailer.
Okay, right. Yes. And does he? Do you mind me asking? Does he work on that basis? Does he that he's effectively self-employed?
Yeah, self-employed. Right. Yeah. So
and how does he find it? Do you mind me asking?
He's not too bad with it. I think he works. I think he works. Every hour he can, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
He takes a day off because he has to. So he has to work.
Okay.
All the time just to make it. But No, you don't
Yeah.
get holiday pay, no
No,
pension,
that's not, is it? That's
no
not
sick
right.
pay, nothing like this. No, it's just like you said, self-employed. You work, you earn where you do. So
And yet, presumably, I mean, don't obviously reveal your brother's circumstances, but those those features where you don't get sick pay, where you don't get pension, where you don't get holiday, that system is designed for people who are running their own business and can make their own provision. But if in effect you're spending all your time working for somebody else, effectively not able to work, that is your work, then people in that situation should get those protections, shouldn't they? Obviously.
yeah, definitely. It's a very American thing, I think, way of.
Yeah.
If you think a lot of these companies that do this are mainly US companies, I would say.
That's right. And the law isn't actually devolved to the Senate. It's a UK wide, to England and Wales. It's Parliament really that deals with this kind of laws. The law hasn't really caught up with this, because the law either says you're an employee. Well, it's not quite this straightforward, but basically either you're an employee or you're self-employed. And there's and this is a bit of a, in practice, it's a grey area, isn't it? Because you're an exclusively self-employed person.
Is this something that the government are looking at?
Well, the UK government, this is a UK government area, so we can't deal with this in Wales because we haven't got the power. The Senate doesn't have the powers to do it. But
not yet, anyway.
No, exactly. It would be good if we did. But there has been a couple of reviews into how we should reform it, really. And so my personal view is, if you are required to work for somebody else exclusively, which people who work for delivery companies usually are, often people in retail in this situation as well, by the way, then you should be treated as an employee, and it should be, in a sense, that straightforward. But the other options...
That's an interesting point, though. You said they're exclusively, if you're self-employed, then you should have the right to work for whoever you want.
Exactly, but generally speaking, people in this situation who are, who you and I would say ought to get their pension and their sick pay and so on, effectively, obviously, aren't allowed to work for other people, are they? Because you're essentially on. When you're required to work for whoever your employer is, you're required to work, aren't you? So it's not like you can say, well, I'm available to you next week between Tuesday and Wednesday. That's not how the setup works. You work when you're asked to work. So the law should look at that and say, to all intents and purposes, you're basically full-time employed if you're doing 6 days a week, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, it's a bit of a loophole in these closing, I think.
Yeah, so that needs work, I think. That needs work.
Yeah. Thank you. I won't keep you much longer. I know you're a busy man.
No, it's great. I'm enjoying the chat. So
yeah, okay then.
Yeah.
I'll keep you going. Is it election next year here?
Election what?
Is an election next year? Are you here?
Well, there's an election this year, actually.
This year. I forget what
year.
This year.
There's an election in May, 6th of May.
That's right. Yeah. You have an opportunity to win a vote.
Well,
so come on, let's hear your speech.
Well, my plea to people really is to vote for someone who reflects your values. Basically, I hope that over the last 5 years I have shown that the things that I said I would campaign for are the things that I have been campaigning for, really. So whether that's about mental health provision, I've done a lot in that space, whether it's about helping young people with skills and opportunities, whether it's about public transport, all of those things are things which I've been campaigning on, and obviously locally in the constituency, but also in the Senedd in Cardiff Bay. So I was chuffed, for example, to see that, where public transport is one of the things I feel most passionately about, and I get a lot of, obviously, people coming to me with concerns around bus services and train services and so on. And I'm really pleased with what we've been able to do in relation to that. So effectively, we're going to take back, we're going to be able to regulate the buses effectively in future, which is really good news. Yeah. And we've also obviously taken the rail network into public control again, which is the part that we are able to do that with, which isn't the intercity stuff, but it's the Wales franchise. So I think that's brilliant. That's a really solid foundation for better transport in the future, and I'm really chuffed about that. And on the skills stuff, obviously I've done quite a lot locally with the college and with employers locally, but equally pushed quite hard to get investment in apprenticeships and so on. And I think what we definitely learnt over the last year is that young people, unless we make sure they're able to get opportunities, will be carrying the effects of the economic effect, if you like, of COVID with them for a long time. So really keen to push on apprenticeships for young people in particular. And the other big thing we've been doing a lot on is around housing, to get investment in social housing, affordable housing, and make sure that when we build it, it's environmentally friendly. So all of that is really, I think it's very important for our future. It's really important for our part of the world, because that's those are the sorts of issues which I get a lot of people talking about, being concerned about. And I just want to make sure that we carry on making, we carry on in the way that you were we started talking about, making sure we can get local employment opportunities, really. And we've been, I think in the last 5 years, there's a smallish group of us in the Senedd who've been pushing this idea that we should get good jobs close to home for people, basically. And obviously we all want to see more big employers locating in Wales, but we've also got to make sure that there are local employers are supported as well, because that's often the people who employ people locally, isn't it? So that's really important for me as well. So those are all things I have been campaigning on and will carry on campaigning on. Really want to make sure, obviously, that and I was also very proud to be the member of the government who took forward the legislation to get 16 and 17-year-olds the opportunity to vote in the Senedd election. So I was really pleased to have been part of that effort, if you like. I think it's really important. Obviously, this is the first time that people who are 16 and 17 will be voting. And my kind of message to anybody who is, eligible to vote is, whoever you decide to vote for, whoever it is, whichever of the candidates you decide to vote for, just make absolutely sure that you use your vote and use any opportunity you can to get answers to the questions that you want answered. It's going to be really tough in the next, how many weeks are there before now and 6th of May, because normally, candidates spend their time obviously knocking on doors, but also trying to meet as many people as possible and in groups and, answering questions. That's obviously crucial, isn't it? And there'll be much, much less opportunity to do that. So I'm trying to find ways of doing Zoom meetings. So I'm doing one for the Delice Valley coming up soon. That'll be going in the community magazine, the date for that. So keep a lookout for that. And there's obviously one for the Neath Valley and Swansea Valleys and other areas as well. Really, it's a sort of public discussion, really. What are the local issues that you want answers on? What are your concerns? How can I help, and how can I reflect those in the work that I have been doing and hope to be able to carry on doing in the Senedd, really. So that'll be advertised in the community magazine this month. So keep an eye out for that.
Oh, well, in terms of myself, I think you just answered all the problems I would have highlighted myself. Transport being the main one, I think. I think isolation is the main problem for young people these days. It's transport getting to, there's local opportunity, but there's also needing to get to the work and back. When I came out of university, I needed money, so I got a job in a supermarket. I'd finish at 8 o'clock, then I'd have to wait 2.5 hours for a bus home. That was every night, so I wouldn't get home for 3.5 hours after my shift every night. It was a nightmare.
That's hard going.
I think it's one of the big issues facing young people, I think, today is transport. And rail as well. You're talking about rail. I looked the other day about a train from Neath to North Wales.
Yes.
Takes about 9 hours.
Well, that's quite a slow train, to be fair, if you do that one, but they aren't very fast. I give you that.
But no, I thought I just highlighted, how transport really needs to. So I think.
Yeah.
Be,
so it's one of my. I can go on for ages on this because it's one of my, hot topics really. So you have to stop me, but I was really chuffed. I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I think this last year's thrown our sense of time out the window a little bit, isn't it? I think it was 2 years ago. I was able to go on the train which goes around all the kind of they're not disused, all the kind of not the passenger routes, if you like, around here. And there's one that goes up beneath Valley, and obviously there's one that comes up to Onllwyn on the Delaunce Valley. So I was on that. I was on the train that did that.
Nice.
And it was absolutely brilliant, to be honest. And it goes on around Llanelli and Swansea and so on. But clearly we need to look at how we can bring back into public use the freight routes that we've got in some of our valleys left, and obviously Delaunce Valley and Neath Valley do have them, because I think that's got to be part of a kind of more a long-term kind of ambitious view, isn't it? There's a talk of a sort of South Wales metro. What we need is, a sort of Swansea Bay area metro which connects all our valleys in East Talbot down to Swansea and so on. Whether that's a bus service or a rail service where we've got the route, where we've got the track. We need it in our part of the world as well. And actually, I was able to push with a few other local MSs to get a study commissioned about how we could do that in the future. So that work has been done. Because I think that would be a really exciting opportunity then, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You could basically, you wouldn't even have to drive to other places to do your.
It'd be a game changer, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
100%.
So that's still a long time away, I think, realistically. But it's these things do take time, unfortunately. Yeah. But we've got to build a case for it, and I think there's a good case to be made.
Oh, that's fantastic. I've mentioned everything I wanted to say.
Brilliant.
This has been fantastic.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed this. We do it again sometime.
If you want, whenever you want.
If I'm lucky enough to get re-elected in May, then.
Well, you got one vote anyway, so.
Okay, just need to get a few more thousand.
But no, thanks so much.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this. Okay, take care. Cheers. Bye.
Ta.